Welcome back. You're watching Global Lens. As India-US ties deteriorate, President Donald Trump's 50% tariffs on Indian goods will take effect from August 27th. The move includes a 25% penalty specifically targeted at India's purchase of Russian oil, taking the total duty to 50% on most imports from India, with only a small exemption list. India criticized this move, calling it unfair and unreasonable. It also pointed out that other major economies, including EU, China and the US itself, continue to import Russian commodities. A planned US delegation visit to Delhi for trade talks on August 25th has been cancelled. This would have been the sixth round of negotiations, considered crucial after 5 rounds failed to produce a deal. Despite US pressure, India has kept buying Russian oil, even as it looks up to ramp up imports from the US as well. In a question regarding the impact of US's 50% tariffs, Union Minister of State for Commerce and Industry Jitin Prasada said an estimated $48.2 billion worth of India's exports will now be subject to the new tariffs. Joining me now to discuss this further is Rajeev Kher, former Commerce Secretary. Mr. Kher, thank you very much for joining us. Does the prospect of 50% tariff become very real now?
Well, from all indications, it looks quite real. And the way the delegation visit has been called off from US, I think it strengthens the whole argument. It looks very possible, and the day is not very far. 27th August is the day.
How do you expect India's trade with the US and our economy to be impacted overall?
Yes, Parikshit. See, you cannot look at this issue as simply a trade issue, because as far as India's exports are concerned, the figures are out and we know the implication. But I think this is a much larger issue which covers not simply India's exports and imports from US, but also investments, because it creates a certain amount of gloom over the bilateral economic climate, and therefore the issue of investments and a variety of non-trade issues which may come up over time. And we have also seen that there is a significant amount of political cloud over this issue. And it's really hard to say whether it's an economic issue or it's turning out to be a geopolitical issue. In my opinion, it's now turning out to be a geopolitical issue. So I see a significant possibility of impact. It can also trigger a chain, God forbid, but as we know, we are principal beneficiaries of H-1B visas and several other areas of US-India economic cooperation. And therefore, we have to navigate this whole process extremely astutely and with a lot of panache.
Right. Can the situation be retrieved from here onwards? Can we still somehow get a deal with the United States? And what will it take to achieve that?
See, there have been US deals now with Japan, Korea, UK, Vietnam, Indonesia. And if you draw examples from them, then I think a deal is still possible. Many of those announcements which have been made by these countries, one really doesn't know whether each of them would be in a position to fulfill all of those announcements. The kind of investment-related announcements which have been made by Japan, EU, UK, and even Vietnam, and the kind of a blanket tariff reduction that Vietnam and Indonesia have done, it is very likely that all of these promises will not be fulfilled. And please remember that we still don't know what is the character of these agreements, how far legally binding they can be or they are. And therefore, it appears that it is essentially too much of, there is substance in it, of course, but there is a lot of cosmetics around it. So I do see a possibility of a trade deal coming through. We need to recognize the political environment in the US and the kind of signals which are coming out and navigate accordingly.
Right. Do you feel that India could have done a few things better? Would there be some lessons from the negotiations over the last few weeks? Because it is being said now that the fact that we've not had a deal and the US is imposing a 50% tariff, it's no longer about trade, it's not even about Russian oil.
Well, I think, Parikshit, to begin with, I think we overestimated the proximity with the new dispensation, and no more new, but the present dispensation in Washington. We thought that it would be an easy walk, possibly. But as it has turned out, it's not simply transactional, but it has a deep underpinning of a very long thought out strategy. Which way the strategy is going, I really don't know at the moment. But in my view, I think we could have navigated a little more cautiously. See, an agreement, a trade agreement with US has never been an easy affair. It is not as if we are talking to US about a free trade agreement only now. This has been happening for the last 10, 15 years. And every time we have failed, we have not been able to cross the threshold. So we knew what kinds of demands would be coming. We knew that genetically modified organisms or agricultural or dairy-related issues or automobile tariffs, etc., they will come in the play. And therefore, we needed to move a little more cautiously. Actually, nothing has come out in the open about the status of negotiations, and therefore it is hard to comment upon them. But I do feel that we needed to recognize that it was not an easy affair to have a FTA with US, and therefore the sort of a perception that was given out that we would be in a position to negotiate a deal, I think could have been a little more balanced.
Right. At this juncture, how do you think India should now manage its other trading relationships? There have been some reports that India may consider joining the RCEP. Would you consider that India should revisit some of these pacts? We were against joining the RCEP earlier, but is it time to take a relook at things?
Absolutely. See, we need to recognize, Parikshit, that we need to expand our market. Now, US has been traditionally a preferred Indian destination, and much of the industry that exports to US has got so used to exporting to US and accepted the variety of facilitative environment that US offers, and the fact that lots of Indian exporters feel very comfortable exporting to US, I think the industry hasn't made enough effort to diversify. So my first suggestion is that Indian industry must seriously think about diversifying. And it is not it is not something which can be done overnight. It's something which will take a longer time. We have wasted a lot of time in not having diversified so far. Secondly, we need to look at our positions on CPTPP and RCEP. There is a lot which I have said in the past on RCEP. CPTPP now without US is possibly something that we can think about. I think we need to look at them very seriously because it's not simply a question of the kind of apprehensions that have been expressed in the context of RCEP vis-a-vis China. See, this is the only institutional mechanism where you have China inside the decision-making process which can be influenced by you. And therefore, it makes immense sense to me that RCEP needs to be, in a sense, from an Indian perspective, renegotiated. Whatever are our apprehensions, we could take them, and we could now, in the new context, strike a balance with China. Same needs to happen with CPTPP. Besides, we haven't explored newer markets. Africa remains in a stagnant condition. There is growth, but we have not been expanding the way we should have. Our review of ASEAN agreements is still on the burner, but hasn't really moved forward. And we need to very significantly and with a lot of depth need to look at our relationship, trade and economic relationship with China, particularly investments coming from China. This blanket sort of a ban on Chinese investment, I think, is going to hurt us because now with bilateral trade with US suffering, there's bound to be an impact on the investments coming from US. And therefore, we need to look at the fact that we need investments for our growth vision. And therefore, we need to take a completely de novo sort of a look at all of these, besides, of course, developing domestic markets.
Right. Those are some very important points. Now, let me just ask you about RCEP specifically. We had major reservations earlier, but do you feel that now in the current context, we should join the RCEP as it is, not seek for any India-specific concessions?
No, I won't say we should join it as it is, because we had apprehensions. Some of them were genuine. I think there is a thawing of India-China economic relationship. We hope things will work out to the extent that it will require huge amount of effort on both sides. I think we need to have a very clear understanding with China in this area, and then need to bring in our perspective to ourselves. I think it will make a lot of sense for all other members who are already part of the RCEP to have India there. It's a huge market. And as a matter of fact, if you recall, when RCEP was finalized and signed by others, they did wait for us for about a year to let India join in if there is an afterthought. So it is not as if they would not be interested in joining RCEP, in India joining RCEP. But I think we cannot join it as it is. We need to work around a few issues. We had a lot of apprehensions on surges, we had apprehensions on dispute processes, and we need to deal with them.
Right. You spoke about having a closer trading relationship with China. We've seen some amount of positive messaging between India and China after the visit of Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi. Both sides have decided to resume flights, resume tourist, business visas, media visas, other kind of visas. Border trade through 3 checkpoints is to be resumed. The Indian government has said, and this is coming from high-level sources, that China is lifting restrictions on high rare earth magnets, tunnel boring machines, and also fertilizers. Very important messages, all of them. How much of this can we really believe for the long term? And when you say there should not be any apprehension, or we should drop some of those apprehensions, suspicions about the partnership, what would those be? What would you be alluding to? Are you talking about Press Note 3?
I am talking about Press Note 3, yes, but I am also talking about the fact that, listen, today it is not as if India alone is suffering because of what is happening from the US. Every country, every trading partner is under a stress. It will be lesser or more than us. In fact, if you talk of tariff, then we are under the maximum stress, India and Brazil. But China is under a stress. And secondly, you don't know when this stress will increase or decrease, because there is so much of volatility in the way American politics is unfurling itself that even China would not be sure about how it is likely to face the American mercurial policy environment. And therefore, even China would like to open newer markets for it, or to strengthen or straighten those markets which have gone into some sort of a complexities. So it is not as if China would not be interested. It is not as if others would not be interested in India coming into the whole equation. And yes, Press Note 3, I did say, and I strongly believe that we cannot color all kinds of investments which come from China, which could come from China. And we need to, of course, we can go case by case, but we need to look at what are those investments which can help us, particularly in the areas of technology and newer sectors, because that is where I think the big question will come, whether we have access to technology in the context of what is happening bilaterally with the US. Will we have a continued access to those technologies? Because unfortunately, with this whole tariff paradigm, everything else which mattered in terms of bilateral relationship with India has been put on hold. And we don't know the signals that we are getting. We don't know whether we will be in a position to continue with the same perspectives as had evolved over the years in several other earlier presidencies, that India and US were developing a relationship which was a long-lasting and a strategically very important relationship. So we need to look at every opportunity for diversification and building new relationships.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Kher, for joining us and giving us an overview of where we stand with our trading relationship with the US and how critical it is for India to reconsider its position on RCEP and also China as well.